Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.
Jake, welcome to the show, man.
Adam, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we got through the back and forth for a few months. We finally made it happen. So I appreciate you sticking with us. Where are you calling in from today? Where's home base?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Awesome. And that'll tie into this project that you're doing now. I'm really intrigued by. Touch on that a bit later on the show. To kick off, we got two questions. And for the audience to know, I'm putting Jake on the spot with both of these questions. So one of them he's prepared for, naturally so. The other, it's fresher. So hopefully we'll get not a response now, get it later. Start off with your kids. Your kids approach you asking you, telling you that they want to serve. What's your reaction? What do you do?
So I've got two kids. My son Jack is 11. My daughter Charlotte is 7. Both fantastic children, extremely athletic, smart, funny, all the things you love in children. But if my children came to me and asked to join the military, I think my answer, because this is something I've thought about for a long time, my answer is probably going to be a resounding no. And that reasoning is, when I joined the Marine Corps, my specific purpose was to get away from home. I didn't have a good childhood. It was, the Marine Corps and the infantry and going to war was safer than staying home. It was the easiest way to increase my station in life, remove myself from generational poverty, and ensure that my family, my children and wife would have a happy, healthy, comfortable life. So, the idea of my children joining the Marine Corps in my own mind means that I've failed somehow, and I didn't raise them to a standard, and I just hope it never comes to that. I use high level sports and school and things like that to challenge them and create adversity in their lives, different types of adversity compared to what the adversity that I had that was traumatic and colored my character from the time I was 7, 8 years old. I would say no. Now, when my son or daughter are 18, 19, 20 years old, I may not have as much control over them as I do now, but that's my initial thought.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were kind of fleshing that out for us, that sometimes or many times, whatever, telling your kids no is kind of a reverse effect. So for whatever that's worth in your thought process there, maybe a less straightforward answer might be more effective.
I'm actually experiencing that right now with my 11, going to be 12-year-old son this year. He's kind of touching on the preteen kind of thing, and he's very reverse psychology works on him a little bit. So
right,
always testing dad.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So second question that I wanted to kick off with, and this is a newer kind of thought process. So I explained to you right before we started recording, for the audience, just bear with me. So the intent that I am trying to create is more awareness around veterans transitioning, veterans background, and potentially disconnect with civilian professional space, civilians in general, and vice versa. So what I'm trying to do is bring to light, based on your experience, what you saw worked well, what didn't work well, hindsight advice, and kind of just even a brainstorm of how do we bridge that gap in supporting a more kind of welcoming, less isolating experience for veterans coming into a professional space, and obviously in this case the built environment in general.
Like we talked about before this, I'm not going to have nearly as a well prepared answer to this one. I will say construction, and even more specifically my industry, the heavy highway industry, I think lends itself very well to the high stakes, stressful environment that is the military. Yeah. I have found a very high level of success in the short time that I've been in this line of work for like 10 years. So there has to be something. There has to be some intangible thing that I'm pulling from based off my time in the Marine Corps that's making me successful right now. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll figure it out in, the next decade of my life. But there has to be something. And if we can, to your point, if we can, pinpoint what that is and then celebrate it and make it known, maybe other veterans will pick up on it and it'll make their transition easier.
Yeah. It's a great answer, and it's not an easy one to point out. I think at a minimum, just bringing that question to light and just having you answer it in any way is a means toward getting to a simpler kind of transition process overall. So yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
I think everyone's different. So everyone's going to have their own, they're going to find their own path, and they're going to key on that one aspect of, their experience and use that, to their advantage. But, like you said, there has to be something that we all get from our time in the military that makes us, better employees, better leaders, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll dive more into kind of translatable skills later in the show. So we'll put a pin in that. But before we kick off on your story, everyone gets a formal introduction. So I'll go ahead with that. Jake Wilson served for 5 years in the Marine Corps as an infantry machine gunner with the 1st Battalion, 8th Marines in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Jake served through 2 deployments to Afghanistan and 1 UDP to Okinawa, Japan. Jake was awarded a Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, and 3 meritorious promotions. Today, Jake is a project manager at Kikosin Construction Company, a Walsh-Kikosin joint venture, building the $3.6 billion Brent Spence Bridge Corridor project, a progressive design build mega project in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's I'm excited to hear about all of your background. Definitely excited to hear about that project. That's one of the longer kind of life cycles of a project that I've heard. So that's really interesting, man.
And actually, just that one little piece you described there, just the construction phase with pre-construction, like this project's been 20 years in the making. So there's been so much leading up to it.
Wow, that's wild. Well, but before we get there, we're going to do a life story. So let's start off with childhood, where you grew up, what childhood was like, and kind of what led you to service. I know you touched on it a little bit already, but let's dive in.
So born the last quarter of the 80s, 1989, October. So I get to say I'm an 80s baby. I am still a millennial somehow, but yeah. Born into family, I had a brother and a sister, mother and father. We lived all over the place, constantly. I probably lived in 25 or 30 different homes by the time I was 15 years old, just kind of always on the move doing something. And I spent time in a homeless shelter with my mother at some point. My mom and dad were kind of always on again, off again, separated, divorced, back together. The cliche Appalachian American, white trash poverty. Didn't have anything at all. I kind of use it as a just a joke nowadays, but we would go to church. It's Easter weekend. We would go to church like once or twice a year. And normally it was so that like my mom could convince somebody that we were in need of like Christmas gifts or it was, they used everything in their power to they did so little. I'm trying to find the words. They did so little. And, myself, I was the oldest. I had a little sister and a little brother. I tried to look out for them and tried to provide for them as, like a 12, 13-year-old kid. I was working a job and going to school and giving my parents my paycheck every week so that we weren't just, absolutely, missing meals and things like that. It was just it was a hard upbringing, a hard way to live. And I think I went to 5 or 6 different schools by the time I was in high school. So I didn't have any long-term friends, which I think today it probably affects me to this day. But I don't have any long-term relationships that I was, like so many, like my wife has friends from kindergarten. Like I think my first friend that I made that lasted longer than a year or two was like freshman year of high school. And the only reason for that was my parents brought me into a specific school district following a low-paying, non-skilled job. And then 6 months later, a year later, they picked up and moved again. And I said, as a 14-year-old kid, I was like, I need to stay here. I need to finish school because neither one of them did. I don't think they finished high school, but I need to finish school so that I can figure out what I want to do with my life. Because I know what you're doing is not what I want to do. So I moved in with my grandmother. I was 14 and stayed with her until I graduated. And then worked full time all the way through high school and played sports and was a halfway decent student. After graduating high school in 2008, I think my plan all along, I remember for a long time, my plan all along was to join the Marine Corps. But I was around a group of kids, for whatever reason, they were like, let's go to college. So 2008, the economy crashes and all of us dumb kids are going to go to college and get ourselves into debt because none of us had any money. So I spent a year at a college in Eastern Kentucky and had a great time, really enjoyed myself. Did not focus on school at all because I had no discipline, no structure. And at that point realized that if I didn't make a hard decision, I was going to turn into a replica of my father, have nothing, never have, a life at all. So I came home from a summer job and, just went to the recruiter. Funny story. So I walked into the Navy recruiter's office in Eastgate, Ohio, little Claremont County, and talked to the Navy recruiter, sat down and said, I think I want to join the Navy. He said, cool. What do you want to do? I said, I want to be a Navy SEAL. Like every kid, it talks about to join the Navy. And this recruiter looked me right in the eye and said, do you know how many Navy SEALs I've recruited out of Claremont County? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, none, and you're not going to be the first one. So I got right up, walked right next door to the Marine Corps recruiter and signed a 6-year contract and left for MEPS and then Parris Island, I think 3 weeks later. It was a quick turnaround because, again, like I said, I had nothing. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a vehicle. So this secured me in the fact that I 3 square meals a day, a bed to sleep in, and a paycheck at the end of the week. Sounds good to me. Sign me up. So off I went to Parris Island in 2009. Boot camp.
How do you, before we get to boot camp, how do you think you were able at that age? I mean, it sounded like very early on, for example, when you stay with your grandmother. How do you think at that age you realized, like, oh, I don't want to become like my parents? I think that's a pretty mature kind of thought process to have.
Yeah, I think on that every now and then. I think it's just because I was put in the position as the oldest kid that I was always having to make like hard decisions and always having to do things that like most other kids my age weren't because I was the oldest kid. Now that probably didn't serve my little brother and sister because they did not follow the same path. So they are on the same track, as my parents and have made the same poor decisions. And unfortunately, that's just because they weren't born first. I just had the good fortune to be born first. So I had to make hard decisions early. And I think that kind of galvanized me to like doing things, even if they're hard, like knowing that it's the right decision, like kind of leaning into the misery of something, knowing that it's going to better me. I think that like being the oldest kid, like kind of forced that. So that's my opinion of it. I'm sure if I sat down with a psychiatrist, you'd find something else that was the contributing factor. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what you said. Leaning into the hard thing. I wonder if that's a takeaway because of military, because that's like a very classic, right? Military outcome is recognizing sometimes you got to lean into the hard decision. I mean, granted, that is obviously what you did. So it's really interesting if there is any separation or if it's just something you naturally kind of organically recognize as a kid. Really neat.
Yeah, I think maybe my military service colored that decision. Like it was, it felt different at the time, but like looking back now, that's the way I justify it.
Sure, absolutely. And what kind of led you to becoming aware of military? Because you mentioned, being keen toward it in your teens. Were like people around you join in? Like, how did that come about?
No, I think like I just kind of any weird kid, in middle school and high school, like I found like reading. I kind of like I'd use reading as an escape. Like, and I'd do anything to not have to go home. So like I would play sports, I'd stay late, I'd read books, whatever. Kind of immerse myself in something else. And I read like every Gary Paulson book, every one that he ever wrote. And then when I got done with that, I kind of found like some random book on like the Vietnam War, and then that turned into like 2 or 3 years of reading nothing but Vietnam era Marine Corps novels. Not nonfiction. So like the real stuff, probably I shouldn't have been reading as a 13, 14-year-old boy. But from that point forward, I was like, I want to join the Marine Corps. I think more specifically, like my idea was, kind of leaning back in toward the wanting to be a Navy SEAL. Like my aspirational goal was to be a Marine Corps Scout Sniper. A long story, but that's was always in the back of my mind. Like that was the thing that I wanted to do, was join the Marine Corps. And then I got, in a group of kids, rightfully so. I had finally made some friends, and they were all from a small rural farming community in Claremont County, Ohio, that, they all showed animals. So I tried to show pigs at the fair, and it kind of, helped me develop into a young man. I learned some responsibility and things like that. But they all went to a agriculturally based school in Eastern Kentucky, and I was like, that sounds fun. Let's all go too. It's because I fit in with the group. So, but I didn't have it. Like I said, I didn't have any discipline at the time. So, I kind of focused more on the beer and girls aspect of it and less on the school. And on top of that, it was 2008, 2009. So the economy was in the Great Recession. So, I quickly did the math and realized I was going to be $50,000 in debt with a degree that was going to pay me $20 an hour. So it was just one, the next step to being my father, which I did not want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, kudos to you for recognizing that and kind of escaping the reality that you grew up in. I'm sure that's not an easy thing. So where I cut you off was enlisting and then deploying to Parris Island, I believe you said.
Yeah, so I went
Awesome.
straight to Parris Island. Did my 13-week boot camp tour there. I went in as just a straight private off the street. Somehow managed to become, got put into leadership position. It was like a guide for a while, and then a squad leader. So when I graduated boot camp, I got like a meritorious private first class, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world. And then I graduated boot camp. My now wife, then she was just a friend of mine, and another good friend that I made in college, drove down from Cincinnati to Parris Island, South Carolina, and they watched me graduate. And to this day, I married one of them, and the other one I texted today. Like we're still buds.
Awesome.
But graduated boot camp in December of 2009. At that point, my parents
let's put a pin in boot camp before you continue there.
Okay.
Walk us through what boot camp was like for you, especially coming from the circumstances that you did.
Okay. So 13 weeks boot camp, 3 square meals a day. You go to bed at 8 p.m. You wake up at 4 a.m. You work out. You do drill. I actually had I think it was like the second or third time I'd ever seen a dentist was at boot camp. So I got like a wisdom tooth out and got my teeth fixed. I actually put on weight at boot camp. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So for the first time in my life, I was eating 3 square meals a day and working out. So I put on like 5 or 6 pounds of muscle. I was, like I said, they fixed my teeth, so I was able to eat. I don't know what it looks like nowadays, but like back in 2009 when I went through, it was hard, but for a different reason. It was hard because, I was surrounded by people that had spent their childhood playing video games, and, this was their first experience in life. I had spent the previous 3 or 4 years just fighting for a life, trying to survive. And, so this was another day.
Sure.
I've been used to getting screamed at constantly. So the boot camp thing, in my opinion, it was only hard because I didn't get to make any decisions. I was constantly being told what to do. And I wanted to rebel a little bit and, got in trouble, got fixed, corrected immediately, and put back in line. And then, by the grace of God, somebody saw some leadership potential in me and put me in a leadership position where I was responsible for other, young Marines or, young candidates, recruits. And that changed me. That gave me some responsibility and forced me to start thinking about something other than just myself, which I paid dividends when I got into the Fleet Marine Force.
Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting perspective. So you finish up boot camp. You had now your wife and another friend join you at finishing ceremony. Then I'd cut you off. What happens next? You started to bring up your parents.
Yeah, I was gonna say my parents had moved yet again. This time they were somewhere in Louisiana. My dad at this point was he was a farm manager for a thoroughbred farm. So I drove back home, whatever home was. I stayed with my parents in Louisiana for 2 or 3 weeks, and then realized that, this wasn't home. Even when they were there, like, it wasn't home. And I think that was the last time I ever spent any like legitimate time with them. From that point forward, if I would come home on leave or, get a long weekend, I was always going back to Cincinnati to be with like my friends that I made in college. And then, my then friend, now wife, her family kind of took me in and treated me like one of their own. So, that was the kind of the end for my relationship with them. It just kind of fell off from there. But I came back from that, and I went directly to the School of Infantry SOI at Camp Geiger, and similar to boot camp, except everyone was a little bit more prepared, very structured, very regimented. You're there to learn your job, and I had picked. I was technically an open 03 contract when I signed my 6-year enlistment. When you get to SOI, like, some people are selected and some people are just kind of fall into positions. I had the ability to kind of pick what I wanted to do, and there's a bunch of different options. You can 0311, 0331. You can be a tow gunner, all mortarman. I just chose machine gunner because it seemed like it was the hardest, because there's so many different things you need to understand. And like I told you before, kind of my long-term goal was I was trying to get into a sniper platoon. They're called state platoons now. And I realized that, or in my young, dumb mind, I thought that was probably the easiest way to get into a sniper platoon, was to be the guy that can carry the most weight and understand like fields of fire and employing machine guns and cool stuff like that. But I chose to be an 0331 machine gunner. That's the MOS designation I was given when I graduated SOI. At this point, I can't even tell you how long SOI is. It's probably 7, 8, 9 weeks, maybe. It's.
Do you recall anything in particular from that period?
It was at SOI that I realized, everyone has that realization when they get to Parris Island, step on the footprints. They're like, oh crap, what have I done? This is real. But when I got to SOI, I realized that this was job training, and my job now was to carry a machine gun. I ended up going into just a line company where I'd carry a 240 Bravo medium machine gun. Like, that is your job now. Like, some people are accountants, some people are landscapers. Like you are now an infantry machine gunner in the Marine Corps. This is your job. So it kind of became real at that point. And then right after SOI, I got sent to the fleet, and it was even more real at that point, because there were guys that had been on previous combat deployments. And you're the new kid on the block. You got to relearn all the things that you just learned at SOI, because they've got, battalion or company or squad specific SOPs that you didn't know about. You've got to relearn, your the military courtesies and things like that. But you got to, instead of saying sir all the time, you've got high lance corporal because you've got senior lance corporals. It was a whole different world. Again, I got to be humbled, which has been a constant thing in my life, being humbled, meeting a bunch of guys that, had just come back from, 1 or 2 deployments. Some of them were non-combat, some of them were combat. Either way, they had seniority to me. So having, those guys tell me basically everything short of, what time to take a shower. Like, my life was controlled yet again. And this was all for a good reason, because it was all in preparation for a deployment to Afghanistan with 1-8, which was, I think it was pretty sure that it was 1-8's first combat deployment in a number of years. And it was the first Afghanistan deployment for 1-8. So we all went into that one kind of, eyes wide open.
So what was your expectation getting to the fleet in terms of deployments, or what was going to happen next? Did you have like any idea, or you were just going where you were told?
Be like completely lost in the sauce. Tell me what to do. Like, it was probably for the best that I had such intrusive leaders, is the word I use. But it was like, otherwise I would have just been a young dumb kid with a little bit of money in my pocket. Who knows what would have happened? But I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that at that point I was many months of worth of training into the process, and just wanted to do what I've been trained to do. So not knowing at all what real combat or Afghanistan was, I was like, bring it on, let's do it. I ended up, I got all that I wanted, but.
Sure. I think is kind of interesting is I wonder if that kind of level of just unawareness can really ever happen again, just because now, with the internet and the way information flows. I find I figure it's just way too easy to just understand the process and where deployments are going and what's happening around you.
From a process standpoint, I think that there are definitely ways that you can be like much better, like when it comes to like being informed or like trying to be in the know. But just the general like raw experience of like you see something on the internet is different than like getting off a C-17 at Bagram and like the wind hitting you in the face like a blow dryer. And you're like, oh crap, I have arrived. Like it's a whole different level of awareness at that point.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So before we get to kind of the workup and then that deployment, I want to hear if you recall, graduating all of your training and getting to your fleet. Like, was that a memorable moment that sticks with you, or is that something that maybe doesn't?
The like boot camp graduation, I remember because I recall I had a girlfriend at the time. I hope my wife doesn't hear this. I had a girlfriend at the time, and then she'll give me so much crap for it. But I had a girlfriend at the time, and she came to boot camp too, to graduation. And I remember like, they would dismiss you at the end, and I walked right by my girlfriend and walked straight to my friend, who was now my wife, and hugged her. And like from that point forward, like I think everyone realized there was something going on there. And it took us many years after that to actually like tie the knot and become like a real thing. But that from that point forward, everyone was like, "Hey, what's going on with you two?" But sure. other than that, like SOI, it just kind of came and went. Getting to the fleet, aside from like that initial traumatic, like the shock and awe of getting there and being the new guy. Yeah. I don't really have a whole lot of fond memories. And long later down the road, like maybe some of it could be attributed to like the TBI and the post blast stuff that I underwent. But yeah, the memory bank is not exactly full when it comes to that, and honestly, probably for the best.
Sure. Yeah. No worries. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I was saying now I just fill my memory bank with stuff that my wife and children do constantly every day, all day. So
sure,
I just kick that old stuff out and put new stuff in.
Sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. So let's get back to, I guess, the workup for the deployment. What was that like? And also, at what point did like your awareness of getting to Afghanistan like kick in?
So yeah, I did I think it was a 6 or 7 month workup where you go to Fort Pickett, you go to 29 Palms in California and do some like super immersive training where you put a heavy pack on, you walk for miles, and then you'll do some sort of weapons drill, you'll do a defense, you do a range, or all the standard Marine Corps things that try to prepare you for combat. And then somewhere towards the end of that workup, our sniper platoon in 1-8 kind of was like, "Hey, we need people that want to carry machine guns and be like, I forget what they called it, like just carry a machine gun." I was like, "I'll go." So they put me through like a PFT and realized that I could walk and clap my hands at the same time. And they're like, "You'll do." So right before we went to Afghanistan, I think it was like a month and a half, maybe 2 months before we left. I got moved over to 1-8 sniper platoon. And then that's when I realized that it was real, because like in the line platoons, there was plenty of experience. It's just kind of like shotgun blasted among the group. But when I got to the sniper platoon, I was around some true warriors. Like there were some dudes in there that had been in the Marine Corps for 8, 10, 12 years, that had been on 2, 3, 4, 5 combat deployments, just hard dudes. And I was a boy, among men. These guys were, I mean, I still look up to them, and they've since gotten out of the Marine Corps, retired, or were injured, or what have you. But these guys made it real, because like in the 6 weeks before we left for Afghanistan, I probably got more immersive training than I had in the previous 6 months. And it's just because they knew what we were getting ourselves into. Like they could walk the walk. And, where I came from, it was very fundamentally based, simple. But coming into the sniper platoon, those guys were trained, and they made me, by force of will, they made me aware that we were getting into something that was very real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So what was that involvement with the sniper platoon about? Like, did you carry on with them, or you went back to your battalion?
I stayed with them for the first deployment. I was a rear security. I just carried a medium machine gun. I got assigned to a section. They were, I think this is a long time ago. I think there were 8 of us in the section. We had call sign Eagle. We supported Bravo Company on FOB 7171. Those are memories that I'll never forget those. But yeah, I was never a sniper. Make sure I make that known. I was never a sniper. Never had the MOS. But I got to work around dudes that were they were warriors. And that we spent 7 months together. Got very close. Did a lot of dangerous stuff. Honestly, more dangerous than what you would normally see in a line platoon, just because we had to. That's just the way we supported the line platoon we were attached to. And I learned so much from just the vantage point of being like in the stack somewhere carrying a gun. I tried to help out in other ways by just being a pack mule. I probably carried so much weight I could set off an anti-tank mine. But luckily I didn't step on any of those.
So was it weird for you to kind of separate from your team that you trained with, and then suddenly kind of deploy? I know you had some markup time with that platoon, the sniper platoon, but it wasn't who you originally trained with or originally were going to deploy with. Was that like a offsetting thing?
Luckily, the sniper section that I got attached to supported the line platoon and line company I came from. So a lot of the guys that I did the workup with were like directly adjacent to me. I just didn't work with them any longer. I worked for them. I worked in support of them. So like we would kick out early in the morning and go do, get in a hide and just do like observation for 24 hours before the line platoon would push out and do a patrol or a census study or a BDA or something. Or we would help, with FO duties or control fires and stuff like that. And as weird as it sounds, a lot of the guys that I was close to and around in Bravo Company and the line platoon went on to be successful leaders, not just in the Marine Corps, but like when they got out of the Marine Corps. So I was around a group of leaders that were, that strong-willed and determined and, wanted the most out of life. When I first got to the fleet, there had been a boot drop about a month before I got there. And there was a couple of machine gunners that were in that drop. And I think 2 of those guys went on to become staff sergeants and then be commissioned as lieutenants. Like there were some true leaders, the guys that wanted all, squeeze everything out of life, that I got to be around, and we all kind of fed off each other. We all, like the old adage, like steel sharpens steel. I truly believe in that because that's what we did. We all wanted the most out of life. We all pushed it to the limit. And we've all been successful in our own ways.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think if you have people around you who are kind of elevating the team, you got to elevate, or it's going to be very obvious that you're not there, that you're not like to par per se.
Yeah, so play your competition. I think I truly believe in that. I believe in that to the point where like I put my children in environments that they are not the highest level athlete, and it forces them to level up. And
absolutely,
so far they've always done that. Like in the environment I'm in right now, in this joint venture design build team, like I am the dumbest dude in the room every time, I promise. But like it forces me to level up, and I get to play at their level, and I'm better for it.
Yeah, totally with you. Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to us about the first moment. I know you kind of mentioned it, which was great. It gave me a laugh. First moment of landing in Afghanistan in your deployment. What was that like for you?
Just like I said, we landed on I think it was a C-7. It was a big ass plane. Landed in Bastion, and like the back ramp came down, and I had a huge pack on in my sea bag that looked like a giant gear bomb, and then like a gun slung on my chest, and it was like a hair dryer 2 inches from my face. I had never experienced that in my life. At that moment, if I hadn't already, I realized that it was real from that point forward.
Sure.
We got off the plane, went over to our gigantic Quonset huts, and immediately started, preparing, because we were going to leave on, helicopters or tilt rotor or trucks or something within a week, 10 days of getting there. Like, we had to do our initial, zero our guns again and get some training. And then we're going to push right out and replace this other, battalion that was occupying the same battle space we were headed to. So funny story, we did some realistic training there on Camp Leatherneck, right adjacent to Bastion, and it was hot. It was a different environment. We weren't used to it. I was dehydrated. We just did like a couple mile run, and some of my seniors were like, "Hey, you and Eck, one of my best friends, Kevin Eck." He's like, "You guys, we're going to do a simulated traumatic blast wound, and you're going to tourniquet his leg, and then you're going to verbatim tell me a 9-line." And I trained it for months. Like, I should have known it, but went to go put a tourniquet on him and blacked out. Just couldn't. I was like, I have no idea. They're like, "You're going to get us killed. Like, you're that guy." It's like, I'm trying. I swear I'm not trying to be, I'm doing my best, which it wasn't enough. But that memory sticks in my mind a bunch, because Kevin was like, "Dude, are you going to be okay?"
Yeah, I hear you. I find that when I'm put on the spot to remember a name or a line or something, I'll forget it, even though it'd be something that I know day to day, always, no matter what. So I totally I feel you on that.
There's another one. I'll tell you this one too, real quick. It's one of the warriors that was in this sniper section I was in. He had been training jiu-jitsu for years, and he was doing edge weapon training, and he had some fake knives, fake K-bars that he would put red lipstick on, and he would do knife, simulated knife fights to try and, teach himself. And one evening, Kevin and I were outside these HESCO barriers, doing the same thing, kind of practicing a knife fight with a lipstick on the ends of them. Some colonel or something walks by and thinks that we're actually having a knife fight, freaks out and stops us. We're like, "They're fake, sir." And promise no one's going to get hurt today. It's just another core memory that I'll never let go of.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. So walk us through this deployment a little bit. What was your kind of day-to-day mission set? What comes to mind in terms of memorable experiences, good or bad?
So we broke into sections. The section I was in went to. Obviously we were in Helmand province. I'm sorry if I didn't make that known before. We were in Helmand province, like most Marine victory units, but we took over for another Marine battalion, and we were on a hill in the middle of this giant wasteland. The hill was named 7171. When I say those 4 numbers, there's going to be 500 dudes across the world that hear that and I know what he's talking about. So yes, 7171. And we basically lived on 7171 with a small contingent of line company guys, 81 millimeter mortarmen, and then my little sniper, my group of the snipers that I was attached to. And what they would do is, they would use 717 as a base of fire. We would launch kind of little patrols in and around the neighboring villages, and they would do census patrols and key leader engagements. And we would counter IED, do counter IED stuff, and we all the time got into small arms engagements. And then the 81s would, that we had a big on the, I think it was the south side of the FOB there, had just a hornet's nest of weapons kind of aimed in this one direction. The direction was pointed towards this group of hills that looked like pyramids. We called it the pyramids. And then we had this line of machine guns and mortars just kind of always pointed in that direction, knowing that that's where the bad guys were. So we, the 11s or the 81s would push out a patrol, and we would do overwatch, or we would push out 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning and get into a hide side and just kind of watch. And then the 81s or the line guys would go push out and do a patrol, and they'd get into a small arms engagement, and we would kind of support them with observation or direct precision fires, or I would get up on my machine gun, with my 240 Bravo and help out. But that was kind of my day to day. If we weren't on post, we were sleeping. If we weren't on post or sleeping, we were on mission. And if we weren't doing those three things, and my mouth got me in trouble, I was filling sandbags. So I filled more sandbags than I care to think about on that one. But that was probably op tempo every other day at least for 5.5, 6 months. And then towards the very end, it always happens at the end too. Like you get through the bulk of the deployment and everyone's like, we may live, we may actually get out of this one alive, guys, because there were plenty of wounded, like guys. The fear was always stepping on an IED. Like IED strike is worse than being shot. And like in my opinion, and I think many share that opinion from way back when, but plenty of guys stepped on IEDs. So there came a time when everyone was like, they just accepted it. Like, today's my day, or, I'm probably not going to make it out of this one, and, just have a little small mind shift change. And then you put one foot in front of the other and keep working, like embrace the misery and keep working. Yeah. But towards the very end of that deployment, like month 6, so for some reason, I'm sure there's a reason, but I'll never understand it, we decided to push across this big dry riverbed, otherwise known as a wadi, and try and take this neighboring village that we had seen as like a hot spot for the bad guys. And like the story normally goes, we pushed in the evening before, the night before. Two guys from my section, so like my section leader and one of the assistant team leaders got like hurt really bad. My team leader stepped on a pressure plate and lost his leg, and then the assistant team leader right behind him like took the brunt of the blast to his face, chest, and arms. So that happened at like 3:00 in the morning. So you can imagine just the absolute rush of like trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do with two guys that might die at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Landed a bird, get them on a bird to get out of there, and then we call in trucks. Trucks come get us. We take a truck ride for 3 or 4 hours to get back to the fob. Mind you, we had just rucked in with, all of us probably had 70 or 80 pounds in our back for 4 or 5 miles, so we were spent. And then the next morning, in support of the operation, we went right back out. I think a week later, on a very similar op where we were trying to push in, adjacent to a big movement to do some observations. Corporal Rod stepped on his pressure plate. He lost a leg, or lost his foot below his knee. So we had a lot of guys specifically in that section get hurt real bad, and it really it colored our perception going forward. And like we realized that we were all just tools. We were there to to do a job, and we had to eliminate the emotion. Put your head down and go to work. That pretty much wrapped up my first deployment. Like, it was pretty steady for the first 4 or 5 months. And then the last month or two, it got real heavy. And then we all came home. Like, not all of us, but everyone left, came home. That was in March of 2011, I believe that was when that was. Yeah, I came home in March 2011. And as soon as we got back, I was still in that still attached to that sniper platoon. They were like, "Hey, you want to go to sniper school?" That sounds great. Long story short, I got an opportunity to go to sniper school. Then I got hurt, and then my opportunity got delayed. And then I went a couple months later, and got like most of the way through. And then in the process of being humbled, got myself in trouble. And then, never actually got the opportunity to graduate. It's one of those things that like, it was probably for the best, because if I had been successful and been able to graduate, I probably would have never left the Marine Corps. And my life wouldn't be what it is right now. Like I probably wouldn't have, my very happy, healthy, smart children, and my wife going on 13 years now. I don't think my life would be the same as it is right now. And it's for the best. But it was, it's something that really jaded me, jaded my experience. And I learned a lot about myself in that moment. Did not stop, didn't slow anything down though. We went right back to Afghanistan like 5 months later.
5 months, yeah. And in that 5 months, first of all, that first deployment, that was extremely active. I was going to ask you, and you brought it up yourself. So that was a lot of work consistently over many months. You got back. That's when you went through that sniper school injury process, and then you deployed again, meaning you didn't really have like an actual break.
I came back in March, and we were back in Afghanistan in January.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So 9 months.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 of that, I was at school. So I was actually only home for like 5 months.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then you had another workup before you deployed again, I'm guessing.
No, that 5 months was the workup.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Okay. 5
Yeah.
Okay. And then you deployed that second time again with that sniper team, or you
No,
were back?
I was part of an H&S company, kind of an attachment group. I got the opportunity to do a little bit of like forward observation and support some of our 81s. It was a whole different type of deployment. This one we were a little more mobile. On the second one, we would do a lot of helo-borne operations, and guys got to fly, do whole company-sized raids, on Osprey, which I got to watch from a distance. But it was a weird time, because I think with the change in the direction of trying not to lose the public kind of support of the war in Afghanistan, our priorities shifted a little bit, and it kind of trickled all the way down to the Marine Corps. And it became like, when it was kinetic, it was super kinetic, but for the most part, it was not the same deployment as the first one. Still definitely had guys get hurt, had guys get killed. But from my point of view, and where I took in that deployment from, it was not the same. That was kind of the determining factor. And I determined at that point I was not going to make it a 20-year career. I was going to try and find something else I was good at, and go chase down that carrot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what you mean by the difference in terms of what that second deployment was like, but I'd love for you to hash it out for the audience.
So the battalion was way more spread out, and from my little, from my place, after I didn't make it through the sniper school, I got pushed over to a more of a support role. And it's hard to go from an individual that all I wanted was to, for a while, all I wanted was to go to war, was to fight. And then I got pushed into this support role that, was punishment, basically. And I got to sit and watch all of my peers go out and do all the things that, that I wanted to do. And it's weird. Like, in my mind, I viewed it as punishment, but it probably kept me from getting hurt. Like so many other guys did. So I looked at it as punishment at the time, but it really wasn't punishment. It was just another learning lesson that my senior Marines, needed to teach me, that I didn't understand, part of growing up.
Yep. Agreed. So, anything else kind of memorable from that second deployment?
I didn't realize at the time. I've since, moved. I'm in the heavy civil space now. I recently read a book called The Profiteers, and it's about Bechtel, which is like the largest construction company in the world. They built a hydroelectric dam in Afghanistan near one of the FOBs that I got to visit when I was in Afghanistan the second time. And it was just coming full circle, the FOBs Ugriji, not knowing what I was there for at the time or what I was in support of, and then coming home and reading that book, an American construction company built this hydroelectric dam in Afghanistan, and we were there 50 years later defending it from the Taliban so they didn't blow it up. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, that is absolutely wild. That was absolutely wild. I agree. I'm interested in looking at that book. Haven't heard of it, and that sounds really interesting.
Very good book. I'd recommend it.
Awesome. All right. So you're coming to the end of this deployment. What's that like, finishing up and coming back home?
I think I came home in August of 12. I think it was August of 12. Like I said, it's been a minute. Yeah, I think it was August of 12. Come home, big change. There's a lot of senior guys are getting out, moving on. Some of the junior guys moving up. I got pushed over to a line company and still in 1-8. I was pushed over to Alpha Company, and then I was an 0331 machine gunner, so I naturally went over to the machine gun section. And they were like, "Hey, we need someone to lead this thing." So I ended up becoming the machine gun section leader in Alpha Company. I had at one point, I think I had 24, 25 machine gunners or corpsmen, under my charge. And, I got to fully experience the leadership dynamic of a bunch of just red-blooded, mean, well-trained senior machine gunners in a peacetime environment. So we were not going back to Afghanistan. We were going to do something called a UDP, a unit deployment program, where we go to Okinawa for 6 months and do a rotation that I'm sure nowadays it makes sense. And then, 20 years prior it made sense. But at the time, knowing that there were units that were still going to Afghanistan and we were going to Okinawa, we were all like just very not happy about the situation. So we got to spend 6 months in Okinawa on Camp Schwab, which I don't know if you've ever been, but I think the best way to describe it is it's a prison. So the only things to do there are like work out, drink, or fight, which is, that's the three things that Marines do. So we did those three things really well. But it was just not, I said it before and I'll say it again with confidence. I would have rather went back to Afghanistan than for 7 months than go to Okinawa for 6 months. It was a prison sentence. There was no, I don't know what happened. Something happened before we got there. Some local national got hurt, and like there was I forget, some sort of just incident occurred with an American Marine in Okinawa. So they like locked the bases down and no one was allowed to do anything, go anywhere. There was one cool kind of aspect. We got to spend, I think, a month in Korea, training with the ROK Marines. That was a very fun experience, just being able to see like a unit that's modeled after the Marine Corps and the manner in which they train. That was a fun experience. It was unique. I know that I would have never gotten that opportunity otherwise. But Okinawa was not fun. I tell these stories to my wife all the time. She's huge, like loves sushi, or the Oriental lifestyle fits her. She just gets so mad when I say that I didn't eat sushi one time. I didn't get to experience the culture, the food, nothing. It was just like a 6 month black spot, in my life, worth of time that I'll never get back. And at the time I had a son, back home, in July of 2013, my son was born. So, he was 6 months old when I left to go to Okinawa, and a year old when I came back. And like in that time span, like he like started learning words and learning to walk, which further jaded my experience to being there. And I just, I was done. The turkey was cooked. I wanted to be done. I wanted to move on. I was thankful for for what I had learned and what I had done and the experiences I had, but I was ready to turn that next page on my life and find the next thing that I needed to, charge down the path towards.
Sure, yeah. So it sounds like at some point in that deployment to Japan, you realized like you were coming toward the end of your service.
Yeah, the idea of reenlisting crossed my mind once. I had some very strong leadership that were like, Sergeant Wilson, when you stick around, like you're the next, you're the future of the Marine Corps with guys like you. So when talked to a recruiter, priorities had changed, post Afghanistan. They weren't trying to retain a lot of guys that were in my specific situation. So there was no incentive. And as much as I loved the Corps, I realized that I said it to a first sergeant who at the time kind of denied it, but I said, I can't be a great Marine and a great father at the same time. And I need to be a great Marine if I'm going to stay in the Marine Corps, because, Marines are counting on me. I need to lead. If we go, if there's a time of war and we go back to that, I need to be the best at that. But if not, I need to be a great father, and with that husband. But those two things require everything from you, and you're not going to get both at the same time. It's not possible.
Yeah. Well said. So you finish, or you're starting to finish. I'm not sure if that last story you just mentioned, that conversation with that first sergeant, was already back, stateside, or that was still under deployment.
I know that was back stateside. I
Okay.
went to talk to a recruiter, and there was nothing to be had. So I realized at that point I needed to shift my focus and figure out what I was going to do post Marine Corps.
Right. Right. So dive into that kind of experience and that time frame of, literally finishing your service, getting into the civilian world, touching on transition period. What was that like for you? What were you doing? What were you thinking?
So this was late 2014. I was towards the end of my remaining enlist. I signed a 6-year contract, but after Afghanistan, they had something called a VERP, which is like a voluntary early reduction in force, where they let you out a couple months early if you have a plan in place. So I actually got the EAS like I think it was about 5 months early. So I did like 5.5 years technically. But I, as part of the reason that I got promoted as fast as I did, because I don't know if I said it or not, I was actually made sergeant at 4 years, 11 months, or I'm sorry, 3 years, 11 months. 3 years, 11 months, I picked up the rank of sergeant, which is, it's common for individuals that are driven, and want to succeed. So I've clearly made that known that I wanted to succeed and wanted to be the best at everything I did. So as part of that, I realized my next plan, I needed to plan, what my next move was. So realized that we were coming home back to Cincinnati, Ohio, made the determination we were going to buy the family farm. My wife's grandparents owned a farm on the east side of Cincinnati that had been in the family since 1954, I believe. So that was the plan. We were going to come home to the farm. I initially looked into going the trade route, just because my father-in-law was a custom home builder in the Cincinnati area. So he had a lot of connections, and, it just kind of made good sense. I always thought that construction would be the most applicable to what I did, just because, you need to have thick skin. It's easy to succeed if you show up and work hard. Like those basic intangibles, they translate. So came home in 2015. Actually, technically got out of the Marine Corps in April of 2015, and spent the remainder of spring and summer working for all of the subcontractors that had worked for my father-in-law for the last 30 years. So I got to frame, I got to roof, I got to hang windows and doors, I got to pour concrete and work on the excavating crew, all the way down to finishes. I think at the time he was building 5 or 6 houses a year, so I got to see the life cycle of a residential build. And then, I had a GI Bill, so I realized that maybe instead of going the trades route, I should look at college. So looked around the area. The University of Cincinnati, great school. You got Cincinnati State in this area, another great kind of community college. You have Northern Kentucky University right across the river, great school, construction management program. Ultimately selected NKU and got a degree in construction management. I knocked that bad boy out in just a little bit under 3 years. So I got my bachelor's degree in 3 years from NKU, and along with the construction management program at NKU, they've got a very robust co-op program where they force you to do, I think it was 2 then, I think it's 3 now. So you have to do 2 or 3 co-ops, at some point during your matriculation in that program, and they'll just throw you to a contractor, whether it's a residential, commercial specialty, or in my case, I did a bunch of heavy highway and heavy civil type co-ops, and it is the best experience for a college student, whether you're a non-traditional veteran like myself coming in as a 26, 27-year-old man, or a 19-year-old kid fresh off the street, doesn't know anything. Combining your educational things that you just learned in class with the experience of being on an active project, or around project managers, superintendents, engineers, foremen, being immersed in the work is the best way to learn this industry. You can go to college for years, get a master's and PhD, but if you don't get to the field and learn how to build things with your hands, it's all theory until you build it.
Yeah, well said. Agreed. Maybe there might not be an answer to this, but as you're kind of describing your process from right, finishing your service and then getting into, starting working with trades, starting school, getting to the program, and so on and so forth. It seems very structured, and you kind of mentioned having a plan. Oftentimes we see a lot of veterans finish in service and not having a plan. What led you to understanding a plan was the way to go? If there was anything that kind of kicked off that thought process, or maybe it was just natural to you. I don't know. How did that happen?
Great question. So one of the things I picked up in the being an attachment in the sniper platoon, mission planning is of the utmost importance, before, during, and after. Like, that is the most important thing to do. And then at the same time, when I was leaving service and trying to find my way, I was the primary breadwinner for my family. I had a wife and a son. And back to my origin story, I had made the determination that I was not going to be I wasn't going to raise a family the way that I was raised. So, like, I was going to do whatever it took to ensure the comfort, health, and safety of my family. If that meant going to college, going to school 8 hours a day and then working 8 hours a day, that's what I was going to do. And that's not to that extreme, but that's, I held down a full-time job the entire time I was in college, and I still managed to complete my bachelor's in 3 years. And I did, 3 co-ops. Every one of those co-ops ended with a job offer. So, I did everything I could, everything in my power to ensure success. And it started with, writing out a detailed plan where I want to be in 5 years, how, short term, I call it short fight, long fight. So, like, what's going to hurt me or what's going to, benefit me now versus what's going to hurt me or benefit me in a year or 3 years or 5 years. And on top of all that, like, finding a mentor or like a successful person that's 1 or 2 rungs above you, and like emulating them, or just sitting them down and buying them lunch and asking them how they did it. Like, I've done that more times than I can count with people that I can see are successful or have done something impactful. I'll cold call individuals. I've done it recently, and just sat down and said, "Hey man, like, I'll buy you a beer. How'd you do it? Tell me how you did it." And it was like this guy's a vice president in the Cincinnati area. It was a prior service Marine, 20 years removed. I was like, "Hey, I'll buy beer. You just do the talk and I'll buy the buying. Let's talk." It was a fantastic experience, but that all that comes back to having a plan. What is it? Failure to plan is plan to fail. Like, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. Period.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, I'll plug that as an awesome translatable skill as well, right? Just taking your experience in the Marine Corps and understanding the necessity of a plan, translating that to exactly what you just described, getting yourself sorted in civilian life. So that's really cool to hear. Before we continue kind of in your career path, I want to touch on that transition period. What kind of hindsight advice do you have to give to others listening, now that you're where you are today?
I would say the biggest takeaway that I had is, when I left the Marine Corps, like, in lay terms, like, when I left the Marine Corps, I was somebody. Like, I was good at my job. Like, people knew me. I didn't have to introduce myself. My credentials spoke for themselves. And then I left that career and started a new one. And I was the boot again. Like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. I had no skills. And just accepting that, acknowledging that it's true, and then trying to change it as fast as possible is the best way to be successful for a transitioning veteran. You are not going to be welcomed onto an iron worker crew, as the new kid on the block because you spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. Like, they don't care. And it shouldn't matter, because most of those skills are not translatable to that one specific industry. You have to understand that you left something and starting new again. So you have to humble yourself and be okay with being wrong, be okay with being told what to do, because it's not an ego game. It's simply like, there is a learning curve. And if you embrace the knowledge and experience that you're going to eventually get from the people in this industry, like, you're going to be wildly successful, because eventually the skills, the instincts that you learned in the military they're going to kick in, and you're going to have the knowledge and experience from what you're doing now, and you're going to be that much better for it. I know it was kind of a wordy response, and it's more of like I feel the answer more than I can convey it. And that's only because it worked for me. like I had to humble myself and start over and be the new kid on the block and, be the nobody. Fast forward 10 years, like I have the opportunity, the privilege to be on a project, a mega project that is 35 minutes from my home. That is, it's a generational project that's going to leave a lasting impact on the skyline and the geographic area where I call home. So for the rest of my life, I'll be able to drive across this bridge and say, I built that. And then my children will be able to say that. And my grandchildren will say, like, oh, my grandpa built that bridge. I'll always have that. And it started with humbling yourself, being okay with being the new kid on the block, and not resting on your laurels, not relying on your time in the military to justify your existence now.
Yeah, that's a really awesome answer, and I find that to be really the overarching best advice. Without needing to be specific to everyone's individual story, I think that's just general advice that everyone needs to accept. Which is essentially saying you gotta take your ego out of it, understand that you're starting from scratch, learn yourself up, and then once you learn yourself up, you're going to be able to apply just that instinctual skills that you learned and were really embedded in you in your service. Kind of moving yourself upward in kind of like a managerial perspective. So yeah, that's a really awesome advice. And also I like to plug into why built environment's so cool, to your point of building that bridge, that you get to change your own skyline of where you live and drive on and tell your kids you were part of it. Really awesome, man. So I want to segue that into kind of how you ended up in your position today. Was that kind of a post co-op acceptance?
Shameless plug for Kikosin, the company I work for. They are the local varsity team. They have these well-known orange trucks in the Cincinnati, Columbus area. Like they are the dude in this area, and I saw them from afar, like in my early career, and even in college, I saw them from afar, and I never had the confidence to ever even like look at employment there, understand like what that would look like if I became an employee there. It was just so daunting because like truly they are the best of the best at what they do. This company is the best of the best at what they do. So I spent a lot of time just trying to get, I compare it to like the CrossFit of construction. I tried to get as much varied, complex experience as fast as possible to build myself up, to do a workup in preparation for what I knew was coming. And that was, this project. And there's actually one right up the road called the Western Hills Viaduct that is another mega project in our backyard. That I knew I wanted to be a part of those generational projects that are going to, impact our area for years to come. But I just wasn't confident enough to ever say like, hey, are you guys hiring? I spent, years building myself up and getting experience, getting, references, knowledge, networking with people. And then the news finally broke that, the Walsh Kikosin Design-Build team had been selected for the Brent, Spence and the Western Hills Viaduct. And at that point I knew like, now or never, like I need to throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. And I, just got lucky that I've got a fantastic boss. He's the VP of operations in Southwest Ohio. He kind of brought me in for an interview and let me have another one of these like just verbal, I don't know, like word vomit. Basically, just told him how much I love what we do and what would love the opportunity to be a part of the team. And I'm like, and I said like I realize I'm coming in with a little bit of experience, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be part of the team. I was like, I'll go work in another area for a while until this one starts. I'll do another role, and if that's what you need. And I think I just effectively conveyed to him that I would do anything to ensure the success of this project, and it resonated with him. And I had a job offer like the next week. So I get to be a part of this project I came on in mid 2023. So it is an absolute privilege and an honor to say that I'm a part of this project team. I said before, like I am almost always the dumbest guy in the room. Like, and by no means am I dumb. I've worked a long time to get to where I'm at, but there are some extremely intelligent people on this team. And we get to build some extremely complex structures that it's going to be amazing. I look forward to the challenge. Like it's going to define hundreds of careers. There are probably At this point on the project alone, there are probably 50 guys, not guys, there are 50 people, men and women, that are in similar positions that just want to have their hands on this project in some way. And they've come from far and wide. There are people that have built bridges in Portugal and, California, Florida, Scotland, Ireland, like all over the world, has brought some of the smartest, most intelligent people in the world to Cincinnati, Ohio for this project. And I get to be on this team.
That's really awesome, man. That's I love how you put that in terms of, just putting yourself out there, throwing your hat in the ring, as you put it, to just get the job, make it happen, try at a minimum. So congrats on that. It's really, really cool to hear it in your journey toward being in this role. Curious, give me the third grade version of how you start a bridge.
So I know the project is called the Brent Spence Bridge Corridor Project, but it's actually 6 miles of realignment for an interstate highway, 5 miles in Kentucky and 1 mile in Ohio. I know 1 mile doesn't seem like much, but there are 42 individual bridges in 1 mile. There are 20 plus more in the 5 miles in Kentucky. And then there is one massive double-decker companion bridge structure that's going to be built right next to an existing steel truss bridge over the mighty Ohio River. So like, as far as how do you start a bridge, we are currently a year and a half into design. We will be through the majority of design by the end of this year. We will break ground at some point early next year. And how do you start a bridge? We are going to, it all starts at the foundation. Just like everything else in life, it all starts at the foundation. We're going to drill some massive drilled shafts in the river. It's going to be some of the coolest stuff you've ever seen. I mean, it's no different than a little bridge, except all the quantities are just gargantuan.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool, man. That's awesome. Excited for you to get to that phase and see the bridge grow and get built. So before we close out kind of the professional side, I know you mentioned a handful as we were talking through the journey, but I want to give like a specific plug to translatable skills. Go forward there, military to civilian profession.
So funny story. And I probably should have said this earlier, but I didn't say it. When I was leaving the Marine Corps, we go through this course called SEPS and TAPS. It's like a separation and transition assistance program. Excuse me. And it's meant to help individuals that like don't have a plan or like have a little bit of a plan, kind of fully build out the rest of what they need to do to move into the next career. So I did this SEPS and TAPS course, and I sat in there with like 50 other Marines, and there was some civilian educator at the bottom of the little auditorium area. And she starts the course. The lady starts the course, and she's like, "What?" Points at the crowd. She's like, "What do you do?" And the guy's like, "I'm an airframe mechanic." She's like, "Cool, you can go into aviation and work in a mechanical field." And she's like, "What do you do?" And the Marines, she's like, "I do administrative stuff." She's like, "Cool, you can go, do X, Y, and Z." And she points at me, of all people, points at me. She's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "Well, I'm an infantry machine gunner. What do you think I can do?" She's like, "You ain't really got much going for you. Maybe you could be a cop or something." That's what verbatim. That's what she said, and it has stuck with me for. Man. Clearly, I'm still mad about it, but she said that, and I came home and told my wife, and like she got mad, and I have used that as like fuel to change the narrative because like the whole there's this funny little phrase. It's like, IR grunt with the R backwards, like how like the Marine Corps infantry is just run by a bunch of just crayon eating Neanderthals. But my experience in the Marine Corps infantry, I got to work around equally as intelligent people then as I do now. I mean, I got to be around people that were, played college baseball at a high level. They went, there were some guys that had just finished their master's program and were like, there's a war going on. I'm going to go join for 4 years and just stop what they were doing, as intelligent and on track with their career, and just join the Marine Corps and want to go be an 0311 rifleman. I know I was in the Marine Corps with a young man who, after his second deployment in the Marine Corps, switched to the Army, went to West Point, is now a chemical weapons officer on a submarine. Some of the smartest people in the world. And it's there was just no acknowledgement of the intangibles of military service. Being able to make a hard decision while under duress and being able to effectively communicate while under duress are some of the most important factors of being an effective manager in construction, because all too often you've got these very over analytical engineers that, they see a problem and they'll do math. They'll look at it from 100 different ways, which is not wrong. But in the meantime, while they're doing all that math, someone like myself or like one of my peers will just make a decision, right, wrong, or different, because, let's make a decision. Let's move forward. And if it's the wrong decision, we've at least eliminated that as an option. So now we can go forth with the next decision. But being able to make an effective, appropriate level analytical decision under duress and communicate with a cross-functional team with people of different personalities, which again is Marine Corps 101. You've got guys from all over the world coming together to work and do something as important, stay alive and defeat the enemy. Those two things right there will make you a extremely successful manager. The being able to build something is definitely important. Being able to communicate is otherworldly more important.
Yeah, very, very well said. I absolutely agree. That's always my kind of top takeaway, just in my own experience. And also, again, one of these things that are applicable to pretty much anyone, especially those who have spent time in infantry and kind of very intense environments. So, yeah, very well said, man. That's awesome. All right, closing out, and I'm keeping an eye on the time because I know you got a hard stop pretty soon. Got two last questions. One is any book or books you'd like to recommend to the audience. Feel free to replug the one that you already mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, it's on my desk in the other room, but there's a book called The Profiteers, and it's about Bechtel, which is one of the biggest construction companies in the world, and their rise to absolute world dominance when it comes to construction. And again, it kind of plays into the idea of these mega projects that, multi-year, multi-billion-dollar projects, and just how important they are. And then back to how Bechtel was able to creatively influence decision making at the policy level. Great book. Warfighting, that's a Marine Corps publication. It's called Warfighting. It's about warfighting, but it has fantastic undertones of how to be an effective manager, how to develop strategy at a baseline level, how to lead cross-functional teams. It is not just a publication for Marine Corps infantrymen. I've read it 8 or 10 times since I left the Marine Corps, and it helps me make decisions every day in the office. Those are the only two that I've read recently off the top of my head.
Yeah, two's great.
Yeah,
two's great. Those are awesome recommendations. I'm going to put both of those on my list. They sound awesome. All right, last question here is going to be what your wellness practice looks like.
My wellness practice. Well, it's gotten a little off track recently. So for a long time, I was big into running and lifting. This project takes up all my time, and then my children and my wife take up what little bit of time is left over. Compared to what it used to be, what I do nowadays to try and stay somewhat well, I do yoga with my son.
Awesome.
So we do yoga probably 3 days a week. I will just turn on a YouTube video, and he and I'll do a yoga session together. I do still have a garage gym that I try and get into, maybe once a week if I'm lucky. But my family raises cattle, so we have cattle right now. We have 2. We're about to get 2 more, among other animals. So just housing those animals and keeping them alive is a job by itself. So feeding, mucking out stalls, throwing hay from the hayloft, those things keep me pretty busy and decently fit.
Yeah, no, that absolutely plays. I agree. That's also just a great, hobby / activity, especially for your kids to kind of witness and be a part of. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. So before we close out, we got a few minutes. I know I'm being really tight, but I just wanted to hear about that Purple Heart story, why you got awarded, what was going on, which deployment was that? I would love to squeeze that in before we close out.
Absolutely, yeah. So November 2010. So that, remember I was telling you about PB 7171 and then the pyramids that were south of us. Some bad guys were messing around in a building about 2,000 meters away. And that kind of observation escalated into a full-blown firefight. We ended up shooting a bunch of tow missiles and a whole bunch of 50 cal and Mark 19 rounds in that direction. And when you do that in the Marine Corps, we had to do something called a BDA, a battle damage assessment. So that evening, we took a foot mobile patrol down in and around those pyramids and the buildings that were just at the base of it, to try and find evidence of the Taliban in that area, and if we had had any positive identification, if we had done our job, for lack of a better term. And we're walking down an alleyway. I have a video because I was carrying a camera during this battle damage assessment. Walking down an alleyway, and I step on a little toe popper, a little anti-personnel mine. Luckily, it was buried a little too deep, so we had something. I had something called a low order detonation, where like it blows up, but a lot of the blast is absorbed through the dirt. So it like took me off my feet, scared the absolute, scared me to death. I thought I was dead. I thought I lost limbs. Dropped my camera, dropped my machine gun, like kind of came to immediately and jumped back up, grabbed my machine gun. And the first thing you're taught in any IED strike is, if you can, get off the X, get away from the detonation point, because likely there's either more IEDs or there's a complex ambush with small arms fire coming right now. So I got off the X, ran about 20 yards, and then my adrenaline wore off and everything started hurting super, super bad. Kind of took me to my knees, and then I kind of just sat down. And my team, I got the whole thing got recorded because I dropped my camera and it was face up, and you see like the guys like running towards me, like just absolutely running right where the IED just went off, running right over it to get to me, like complete disregard for their own lives. They get to me and do a full kind of check and cut my pants off, and I've got frag wounds and torn my knee up a little bit, like messed my ankle up. I still had all my parts, like I was still whole, but I had scared. I lost most of my 9 lives that day. Yeah. They put me on a stretcher and put me back in a truck, and told me that if we were in America, I'd be buying a lottery ticket right now. Because actually, I think a couple weeks prior to that, one of the guys in 81 millimeter mortar platoon, walking out of the same alleyway, stepped on an IED and almost lost his life. Staff Sergeant Silva, strong dude. Still communicate every now and then via Facebook. We're all kind of spread shotgun blasted across the country, but same alleyway that Silva got hurt in, and I luckily, for some reason didn't get hurt as bad. Wow. But got back to the fob and got in the medical tent, and like just the most austere, like put some iodine on it and scrub out the frag. And I think it honestly hurt getting scrubbed out more than it hurt stepping on the IED. But op tempo was so high, and we were just like, we had to go back to work like immediately. So I think I took 3 days off, had some like 800 milligram ibuprofen. And then from that point forward, on all the missions we go out on, like I would like blouse my boots and then take duct tape and tape my ankle like I was playing football again in high school. Yeah. And that's how I completed the balance of that deployment, is with a taped ankle.
Wow, that's an unbelievable story, man. I'm glad I asked, and thank you for sharing.
No worries. Yeah, like I said, I've got it on film somewhere. It's on some hard drive somewhere. I'll have to find that thing, and I'll share it with you.
I hope you do, man. Yeah, that would be amazing if you do. Please, if you find it, please share it. Absolutely. Well, Jake, really appreciate you sharing your story, jumping on the show, being a part of our mission here. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you for having me, Adam. I appreciate it. Look forward to continue to follow you, and hope for the success of all your endeavors.
Likewise, man. Likewise. We'll be in touch. Chat soon.
Yes, sir.
See everyone.
Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.